Mankind took to the stars to find answers, to find friends, to find anything that they could find. Not to do anything with it, but to simply find it. From the earliest ancestors who spent nights in front of their caves staring up at the stars, to the astronauts who braved fate and defied Mother Earth's gravity. For centuries they dreamed of space, and shortly after the 21st century concluded, they finally found it. As with all new explorers, Mother Earth was quickly forgotten, overcome by the great thirst for knowledge, discovery, and new beginnings. Mankind spread. To Mars, to Pluto, human footprints appeared across the system, then far beyond. Against the expectations of the gods that created them, they defied the universe itself and began to thrive in the cold void. For but a moment, for but a time, mankind's hatred, rage, and anger lay dormant. For a short but beautiful time, there was peace. As the first of man's kin began to leave the star system, the first people set foot on other worlds far from Gaia's embrace, the fires of war began to spread. Fleets battled across Sol, lasers crisscrossed through the void, bodies frozen in the cold, disintegrated in atmospheres. War, inevitably, never changed. That is until a wayward railgun slug flew towards Earth. The battle suddenly ended, the war over, the hatred vanished, replaced by a single scream of agonized despair, pain, and misery. Every radio, every world, everything, everywhere, echoed a scream of pain, followed by the sobs and tears of a man in a state of pure suffering, as if the weight of the world became that much more of a burden to bear. When humanity regained its composure, they looked across the void to find Atlas, the titan from ancient myth that was cursed to hold up the world, tears streaming from his eyes as a trail of blood ran from his right arm to drip down into the void. At first, disbelief. Fleets of ships swarmed around the Titan's form, the largest dreadnought mankind could bring to war, barely the size of his fist. Atlas stayed as still as he could, fighting through the pain, as the skyscraper-sized hole in his arm continued to bleed. Mankind was stumped at what to do at first, spending time after the discovery to gawk and question. Then, one man's voice blasted through public channels. "Medic!" Seconds after, a swarm of ships, fleet tenders, medevac ships, and any transport with any kind of locking mechanism or grabbing arm, charged at speed towards the gaping hole. The fleet swarmed across the vast void of space. Atlas cried harder, begging the humans to stop hurting him. They ignored his ancient cries and swarmed the gaping wound they had caused. Metal claws pulled on broken blood vessels. Mechanical arms gathered any and all fabric and fiber they could find to fashion a bandage. One brave fleet tender flew into the deepest parts of the wound and returned, covered in the Titan's blood as it held the offending slug in its claws. As time passed, larger swarms of more powerful, more capable ships replaced the tiring swarm. Some ships carrying fluid tanks full of items such as morphine, painkillers, and basic antibiotics. As the work tirelessly continued, the largest of humanity's war fleets moved across the void and positioned themselves underneath Atlas's damaged arm, with thrusters firing at full power. Using their own mass to supply a small comfort of relief, a rest for the injured limb. The hulls of these massive beasts crushed, squished, and strained against the massive weight, but managed to relieve at least some of the burden. With the pressure on his arm relieved, Atlas looked up and his tears slowly dried. The humans who wronged him had by now crafted a bandage thousands of miles in length and were painstakingly wrapping it around his arm. He watched in amazement and wonder as the swarm of machines worked tirelessly to correct their mistake. By the day's conclusion, the pain was gone, and a swarm of ships were sacrificing their very structure to give him the rest he needed to heal. Atlas watched in amazement and wonder, as the humans he was cursed to keep for so long began the tireless work of repairing the damage. Humanity, overcome by a sense of guilt for their single accident, started to relieve more and more of the burden from Atlas's tired shoulders. Ships that held up Atlas's arm to help him heal properly were slowly replaced by ships that looked specially crafted for the purpose. Atlas questioned this, wondering why resources and effort would be wasted on such endeavors. Humanity ignored him and carried on regardless. Humanity was abuzz not only for the discovery of an actual god holding up the world, but also that this entire situation even existed in the first place. Scholars, scientists, and theologians alike spent their time debating and arguing on the matter, while engineers, mathematicians, and computer programmers worked tirelessly to come up with solutions to help the Titan. Time played both as the norm. For Atlas, a day was but a week for humanity. The tiny swarm of warships, tenders, fleet ships zipped and zooped before his tired eyes, and were slowly replaced with better, more adept or purpose-built machinery. Atlas's body was a cause for curiosity by its very existence. So potent was his curse that it warped reality and physics in his presence, creating anomalies where pockets of air would appear that he would breathe in. Experiments were conducted on blood, tissue, and skin samples, and various debates were held by every community that could speak. The curse of the gods upon Atlas was so severe that an invisible, intangible floor held up his feet, and an invisible, intangible bubble kept his hands from scraping against Earth's crust. Atlas was astonished at the speed and resources being used for his benefit. As the months passed, more and more of the burden of his charge was lifted from his shoulders. Humanity searched for more Titans, using Atlas to calibrate or manufacture special sensors and detectors, only to find Atlas and Earth being the only ones suffering this fate. Humanity busied itself working hard to relieve Atlas's charge, and continued his expansion. For the resources needed to cover the Titan's efforts, entire worlds were strip-mined to the core for raw materials. Over the months that passed, mankind toiled to find a permanent solution. For safety's sake, at this point Earth had been all but evacuated completely, its only inhabitants being researchers or the robots that maintained them. Numerous attempts were made. A specially built sling was made and placed on Atlas's arms, with large rockets or starship engines to cradle his arms. This failed in the long term, but allowed Atlas a moment of rest for the first time in thousands of years. With this small success, humanity worked to attempt more solutions. One such attempt was to offer Atlas an enormous cup of tea with a straw. A massive tube 60 kilometers long was built, reinforced and welded to a large stadium-sized bowl, crafted from ceramics and metal reinforcing. 22,000 tons of tea was poured into the stadium, along with over 800,000 gallons of water. It was slowly boiled over weeks and offered to the Titan. Atlas, that day, had his first drink of delightful tea, along with his first drink of anything since assuming his punishment. Mankind toiled. Oh, did it toil to lessen his burden, trying everything and expending countless resources, with entire fleets dedicated to this one charge. And one day, mankind found a solution. Construction began in earnest, and over the course of months, parts, pieces, and components of a mechanical exoskeleton were put into place around Atlas's body. The giant machine strained to take the weight, but the burden quickly lessened. For the first time, Atlas breathed, stretched his tired muscles, and shuffled to get a better grip on his burden. The machine strained such that several joints snapped, and large starships had to force themselves at full power to replace the connection, allowing tenders to repair the damaged sections, and entire starships sacrificed their very existence to replace destroyed pipes and actuators. It was strenuous, but effective. For the first time, Atlas was able to relax, to feel at ease. Over the coming months, humanity worked to strengthen the exoskeleton. Billions of tons of metal, machinery, and equipment all used in this single project. Humanity felt an odd sense of duty to the cursed man. Then, one day, it all ended. As humanity celebrated the successful replacement of an actuator joint, Atlas cried out in joy. "I'm free! I'm free!" he yelled into the void, as his hands left the bubble. He nearly took out part of the fleet, humanity's ships scrambling to escape his form as he tumbled onto the intangible, invisible floor. He smiled up at them, and with tears in his eyes continued to repeat the phrase, "Thank you," as his body slowly faded into the void. Reality returned, as did physics, and the exoskeleton was cast into the void as humanity scrambled to avoid the debris. Atlas's cry of joy could be heard across the entire star system, and all across human space. A mixture of happiness and sadness overcame mankind, as it cleaned up the operation, recycling the metals and machinery for other purposes. Atlas had been relieved of his punishment by mankind's kindness. Humanity had been absolved of guilt for his accident, caused by his anger and hatred. In Atlas's honor, mankind used its resources one last time to construct a large monument, depicting Atlas with tears of joy as he takes his first ever tea break. The story about this is most abnormal, isn't it? A story about a mythical titan that suddenly came into being by being hit with a wayward artillery shell. A story about a species so ridden with guilt for causing this creature any kind of pain that they effectively utilized an entire civilization's worth of resources to help the poor guy out. The creation of an enormous cup of tea and a straw, followed by a massive effort to construct a huge robotic exoskeleton to try to make life easier for him. Sounds outlandish, doesn't it? But I'm afraid it's all too real. That titan did in fact exist. The exoskeleton they created is a jumbled mess, but it's left as a monument in the Sol system, slowly orbiting the star between Mars and Luna. The giant bowl of tea and the straw, that was moved with great expense to the human colony at Ceres 11. It is now owned by a tea company to use as a sports stadium. Why am I telling you this tale? Because if you are reading this document, you know who humanity is, what is done, and that you have to thank them for something. For it is humanity that has spent the last few centuries shouldering the burden of the galaxy's woes, all in the name of a titan who wronged the gods, or because they felt a sense of guilt for a mistake they made. When the Great Plague hit the Orionist segment, humanity was the first to help any infected planet, losing millions of their own. It's because of them that plague was extinguished. They were the first to be on the front lines when the Great Devourer broke out of her prison in the Dactaris system. They were the first to extinguish the threat in its entirety. They were the first on the front lines of the Great Kataran Civil War. It's because of their direct intervention that war was avoided. Because of them, the Kataran Empire now oversees the defense for the northern sector of the Federation's borders. All of this because of Atlas. Every new member of the Federation is legally required, if not morally obligated, to perform a pilgrimage to Atlas's shrine on Earth, as you are now required to do so. This is the secret to humanity's success. This little tale is why the Terran Union is on the top. This is why they have all diplomatic channels. This is how they are at the top of the hierarchy around here. You are going to make a pilgrimage to this site, to learn the same lesson they did, to share the burden of existence and do your part, to learn how to help us, so we can help you. On behalf of the Galactic Union, we welcome you to the fold.